Wow. We made it to the end. We're very tired, but we're very excited, and we're so happy to have had this journey with all of you, this journey together with Lydia, but also with Ivan and with an amazing team of people here in Tallinn. We started meeting them through a screen, as you can imagine, and then we became in-person friends. It's great to be able to close these 3 days with this symposium, because that multilateral, multi-layered discussion that happened during those days adds to everything that we're trying to showcase in the exhibition. I think that one exhibition or 25, 30, 35 participants are not enough to offer the solutions that we need, but they are enough to start a very strong conversation and to offer the ground for the next steps that we as designers or citizens or decision makers need to take and make. So we hope that you enjoyed that journey as well. We hope you've learned out of it. We hope that you've rethought things out of it, and you have reflected, and you have managed to discuss with your peers on another perspective on what it is space, what it is time, what it is matter, how resources could come back to our environment. And maybe one of the things that we have been discussing with Lydia is that we wanted to close these closing remarks maybe with highlighting 4 topics or reflection moments, points, I don't know how to call them, that we can take with us from Edible. So we have discussed this yesterday, but some of them we will repeat them just for a sum up, and maybe Lydia.
Well, we'll try to improvise so that we don't say the same thing repeatedly over and over. For the past 2 days we have been doing that, and it exhausts us as well. But first of all, before we go into these 4 reflections, kind of reflecting on a broader web of questions that are raised for us on what we have learned from this exhibition. We want to thank each and one of you personally for being here, for participating with us, and mostly we want to thank the organizers of the Tallinn Architecture Biennale for their tireless work in production and for hosting us over the past 2 years on your screens and literally on this stage. So I'll start from reflection number 1, which I really enjoyed. Mitch is my dear friend for the past 20 years, and I really enjoyed your description of Connie West's project to create a vertical farm with salmon that is going to be local, but the sushi that has to be made has to be farmed from, I don't know exactly the details, but it sounds crazy to me. And as you have described, it becomes, it really reveals in many ways the kind of moment, it's a startling revelation of a hubris that we have all engaged ourselves within. And what we want to point out that, as Beatrice also has shown us in her remarkable lecture, that modern architecture and the kind of modern logic that has been established since the Enlightenment has been helping us to consider ourselves that geoengineering, pioneering is a solution to several world problems. So in this exhibition, one thing that we want to point out is the precarity of life, that we are not in any way or form suggesting a project of restoration necessarily. Neither we are suggesting a project of a return to a harmonic past, which has also been addressed in the panels where the Black Almanac Group, Philippe Mohan and Andrea Provenzano and Eb Lankats and Johan Tali were participating. That was moderated by our wonderful assistant curator, Sonia Ralston. And it was also pointed out that, we have constructed this idea of sustainability, of through the modern lens that it's a problem to be solved by us, the kind of dominant species, that the Earth, the image of the Earth is to be held in our hands as a species. And I think that this is now evident at a tipping point where the climate crisis, the public health safety, and social inequity have become so evident in the past few years. We totally failed in many ways. So I think that humility is needed, and one thing that we have strived and maybe did, or we hope to do in the future, is to demonstrate the fragility of different processes, which Areti will speak about in point number 2, but also the kind of different kinds of solutions that are not just about wholeness and stability and totality, but really engage a wider web of solutions. So you want to?
Yeah, I mean, the fragility of the production and distribution processes, this is a fundamental aspect. It requires, you know, a totally different mindset on how do we bring on our table or in our hands what we actually need. It requires, of course, also a global change of paradigm of how the production processes operate. No, like we produce very far away from where we consume, then we transport to consume, then we are consuming, we are creating waste, and then we transport our waste back into other places. So this kind of linear system needs to definitely be rethought, and it cannot be done only by the top down, but also from the bottom up. And food insecurity, the impact of the pandemic in the agricultural production processes, the Russian war against Ukraine and the energy crisis, different kind of global events, the blockades of the Suez Canal that seized global transportation of products. All these events are actually calling an urgency for rethinking and reflecting this centralized, very distant, far away processes of producing and distribution. So that is something that we want to raise as a very important point, a shout out towards new practices and mindsets that they are more closer to localization, local production, and of course, you know, like different kind of lifestyles or habits in relation to what can we consume according to what can we produce locally or what do we have as local resources.
I mean, there was a panel that critiqued localization today.
I know.
And we have to think about that, the bananas and the transport. And Philip, we have a long discussion to make. But I think what was really interesting in that panel, which may reflect in the third point, is the crafting of desires and how these desires are designed via architecture and are established, distributed, and sustained in culture. So why is the agrarian logic reflecting this idea of sustainability? And in the kind of, in one panel, this agrarian logic was reflected in video games, but also in positions for a heroic kind of nationalism in the lecture of Ep Lankotz. And I think it's really important to create different desires that combine what we have called in the Biennale interspecies alliances that really might point to an alternative paradigm of how we understand dichotomies of life and death. And this is something that we have discussed with Areti together throughout the years that we've been working about this project. So in our minds, interspecies alliances is not just giving right to other species to exist or designing for them, but also it ultimately creates for better life for multiple stakeholders. And in order to do that, it is very important to question traditional dichotomies that have been established for a very long time of what is nature and what is artifice, what is resource and what is waste. And try to understand materiality and design within a continuous web of life and death and in a kind of flow of energy and material patterns and flows.
and maybe last but not least, we've heard actually lots of times in these couple of days the word scarcity. We want to highlight the fact that we want to send a message of optimism. We want to try to, let's say, question the mainstream idea of sustainability that is actually asking everybody to do less, to consume less, to produce less, to emit less, to move less, to eat less, no? We want to question that because we do believe that we can need different things. Mitchell showed us what. We can produce more things in different ways. Many of you have shown that. So we want to shift this idea of scarcity towards a paradigm and a mindset of abundance, understanding and rethinking what is useful, what is resource, where can we mine that resource, these resources. So this idea of rethinking our urban environments or our peripheral environments as mines that we can use our byproducts, we can put them back in cycle, and this could provide abundant resources in different ways for building, for inhabiting, for producing energy, for producing food, for producing built matter. And we actually also wish that this whole event, the projects that they have been presented, the talks that you have all participated in, they become not just a speculative idea, a fantasy, but a kind of an arena of actions that both designers, decision makers, citizens can also see the possibilities of these actions. And we want to send this message, an optimistic message towards a world, a regenerative world, that is able to continuously recirculate the food, quote to quote, that requires to sustain itself.
Thank you so much for being part of this project, and we look forward to talking to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, great. Actually,
can I have, well, again, huge thanks here to an amazing team, our producer, Anna, Anu, Ronya. Is Ronya here? Ivan, you should also come. Okay, come. Has been an amazing team of people that made this happen.
This was also a biennale of many babies, which
it was.
No one knows about, but they emerged along the way of producing the exhibition. And each
How many
one
in total?
of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sophia 6. So between the 4 of us, 5, and one more baby with the exhibition designer, Ivan, you have to have one immediately.
I mean, we had a running joke that I'll have to rent one for the Biennale. Otherwise,
yeah, please, you are baby without a baby. But we just want to thank this team has been tireless. We obey them without question, and we want to thank them for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.